you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the special meeting of the Salem Board of Education to order. It's 6:05. And the first thing on the agenda is the review of the opening plan. So we have several things to discuss underneath that particular subject. We have, Dr. Glover has provided a memo for us, and we have the responses from the parent survey summary. So is it best to start with the summary, and then we can move into the plan?
Perfect.
Okay. Bob, Dan, I don't know if you, for the communications committee, if you,
I'm just
Okay.
bringing it up, so.
Okay.
Technical guru.
yeah.
Sorry, it's- I can share, I guess I can just share it on my
Yes, if
screen
you-
if you'd like.
If you have the. So if you do that, our people that are watching the meeting can see that as well?
They should be able to, if, I don't know, I can't see them probably anymore.
Actually, I can change.
Amy,
my
can you
newsletter.
see that?
Yeah, it says viewing Dan
I
Center.
can see it. You're good.
Thank you. So just some high-level summaries and some of the charts that came through with it. When we pulled these, there are 162 responses. People who filled that out. That could be some people filling out if they had multiple kids in the district. Just over a little over half were elementary level parents. In terms of the school communication, we had about 75% were satisfied with that, with the automated system really being beneficial, as well as the school website. In terms of satisfaction with how education has been handled, and then satisfaction with the quality of instruction, they kind of reversed each other. How the education's been handled, 41% were either dissatisfied or very dissatisfied.
Could you scroll through just so when you
Yeah.
get to the part that you're. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I'll communicate it, so. And then, in general, there we go, even bigger. How satisfied were you with your child's quality of instruction? Kind of reversed, about 40, a little over 40% were satisfied, and a little under, a little over 40 were dissatisfied, or under. And then about internet connections, we thankfully, the majority of the people fell into internet is generally reliable and functioning or better than that. We do still have a good chunk though who don't really have the access. I can tell you out in Hebron, there's a big chunk there. I think Jackie, Shushan, Cambridge.
Unless you're right in the
There's
little
some
hamlet.
out there,
There's
which is
not.
probably, could be a big chunk. The closer you get into school, you probably have more access. And then how comfortable are you with the district in the coming weeks moving towards bringing kids back to school? We had about, I'm doing quick math, 75% are reasonably comfortable or very comfortable. So I think those are the main highlights. I think if there's other things, and everybody, and the last one, everybody wants their kids to be in school. Not willing to kind of maybe give up some of their in-person days for other students who might need more in-person days. It wouldn't necessarily be giving up instruction, it would just be, they would be more remote, but most people prefer at least 2 days. So I can stop the sharing.
Does anybody have any questions for Dan on the survey? I think based on the results of the survey, we're having a very timely conversation.
Yep.
Dr. Glover, you prepared some information for us?
Yeah, information from back up about well, let me look. I can tell you at the top of the page. That's there, and I can share this too. Just give me a second. So here from, about mid-January, is back in information with a question asked about, the possibility of bringing more students back into the school building. A very complex question. It's there. I think, as the surveys pointed out, and I think through anecdotally and conversations that we have had with folks in the community and teachers and kids and parents, there's an overall sense that we want all of our kids back. We want them back in here, we want them back into school as quickly as we can, but we need to be able to do that safely. And among those challenges, we kind of outlined here a little bit in the document here, is that right now, on the positive side,
TV. And Spectrum has our fastest download speed, most reliable performance.
in the, kind of at our side of the environment that we have, is we currently aren't in a zone. We're not in an orange zone, red zone, or yellow zone, so that's on the positive side. Our positivity rate, I didn't look at today's rate, but it has been, creeping around 5% here for the past few days. And we're starting to get more folks vaccinated at this point.
Dr. Glover, I know that
Yep.
they give both a weekly percentage rate and a rolling
Yep.
rate. Do you use the weekly one or the rolling one for this determination?
For this, they can use the rolling rate.
Okay, so 4.7 today.
Yeah, is it 4.7 today? And that's, within the realm where it's been.
Do you know what time period that rolling is?
From the previous day and 7 days prior. And then it changes each day, as I understand it.
So a 7-day period.
Yeah, so it's the 7 day average, basically the 7-day average that's in there. So those are all positives that we're looking at. Some of the challenges we are facing, one is the restrictions that are placed upon us to make sure that we keep schools safe. And that's the big four we've talked about from the beginning. Masking isn't so much of an issue regardless of distance. However, maintaining social distancing is, because that requires a certain amount of space. A challenge that's unique to us versus some other school districts is that we're in the middle of a building project. So with our kindergarten building closed, at this point, that's 14 classrooms we don't have that's available. And because we don't have that extra space available in the primary building, we don't have the space per se to spread out as we would if we did have that building available to us at this time. The building itself is slated to return to the district on May 1st. So that is, so that's a ways off. That building's not going to be available to us. Are there other ways to create space? Yes, but that's going to be at the expense of other programs. Whether that's expense specials or at other grade levels that are there. So the social distancing, the social density, and keeping those numbers down, keeping the separation is all the challenge to keep everyone, everyone healthy and into place. So at the beginning of the, I guess before I jump into the beginning of the memo here, a couple of other items that have, we've brought up and has been shared from faculty is the level of remote students we have currently. That works to be somewhere between 15 and 20%. It floats, it changes, it's not a solid number. Sometimes it's based on quarantine that number goes up, sometimes it's by family choice, sometimes it varies. For example, on any given day we may get an email or a phone call from a parent saying that a family member has been positive, and so we need to keep our kids home because they're in quarantine. It doesn't impact the school as much because it's in the family, and in recent cases, fortunately, they haven't been in school to have a positive for a student to be there. So that's worked out to our advantage. But that's how that remote ebbs and flows. We probably have a stable, around 30 kids at each level, between the elementary level and the secondary level, kind of consistent, but then that changes.
Is that in school or out of school?
Remote.
Remote.
At each level. So
Gotcha.
again, it's about 20% of our student population, 15-20% of our student population that raises a concern. And the other concern that we are getting, that we have on the teacher side is the use of the Friday. Because we have the number of remote students that we have, that there needs to be some amount of time set aside so we can address remote students' learning needs, to get them some time access with the teacher, but also to get the teacher, teachers who are basically planning and instructing in two different modalities, time to plan and put things together and get organized for the week, and that's where that Friday has come into play.
Work.
Sorry, Ms. Vieira? Okay. So.
She trying to
I think
make
she's
contact with
trying to
us,
talk.
or is she not muted?
She's not
I think
muted,
she's
but-
trying to talk, it sounds like. Just my interpretation.
Make sense of what she's trying to say?
No, just a little,
She's muted now.
Is she? Okay. So, in the memo that you have here before you kind of looks at that and kind of outlays the, ideas or suggestions or possibilities or some what ifs. And kind of at the beginning of this memo, we talk about, what type of environment would I think we would need to be able to bring more people back, That's not being in a zone, that's, having a majority of our folks vaccinated. Help with there, having things warm up a little bit so we can keep these windows open and not freeze everybody out at a regular basis for more than, and then being able to, and having the CDC say it's okay to maybe not have to worry about that extended period of time for proximity. Because, for example, in our current meeting, if someone were to go home tonight and call the school tomorrow and say, I took a test this morning and I'm positive, everyone in this room would be in quarantine, right? Windows open, we are socially distanced, we're
15
all,
minutes, right? Masks
we're
or no masks?
all wearing masks, we are still all going in quarantine.
Yep.
Because that's the guidelines that the county puts out for us. So we need some level of relaxation to that, so we can be able to have more students in for a longer
I think
period
it's
of time.
15 minutes within 6 feet. it's extended period of time. I don't think it's
Yeah.
specifically defined for the,
We were told
Confined
at a
space.
faculty meeting just last week that it's 15 minutes mask, no mask, if you're in a room together.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
That's,
They're
our
look-
county is different than other counties, different, like Warren does stuff a little bit different than Washington, but just, that's,
what you're talking.
yeah,
That's their threshold.
that's what I'm.
Yeah, they look at it, the last explanation I heard is they look at it the two ways. It's the amount of time you are in a room together,
Mhm.
and then it's the proximity piece. So both are being considered. So, so that in itself is a challenge as well. Especially at the high school when we're looking at, 82-minute periods, we need some type of relaxation for that to happen. Well, even at the elementary where they're in classes together for an hour or so to make some types of things happen. Brought together is some options. It talks about changing the rotation, which would get you like another day a month in, if you're looking at the grid that's there. It's a pretty big change for really a minimal return. Because in the kind of the every other day approach, and basically that would be reintroducing Fridays back into the instructional model. That would get you an extra day for each side. So pretty big change to get an extra, 80 minutes per class, into a class and into some learning there. But it works into possibilities.
It's a whole day. You're talking
Yeah,
about-
it'd be a whole day, but you figure like for elementary kids, it'd be the one ELA class, one math class, as they rotate through. But it would be an instructional day overall. And the rest of the conversation in the memo really falls to space and the need for space, and then having the staffing for supervision for the space. Now Jackie has shared before about she's got 2 classrooms, and she bounces back and forth between the classrooms with someone to the opposite. Is that right, Jackie? So,
Yeah.
so she starts with classroom A with someone in classroom B supervising, and then when it comes time to switch, they switch. So Jackie will head over to the other classroom, work with that group of kids while there's supervision in the other places. We would have to build the structure in place to make that piece happen. And to do that would be a pretty major program change. Because, just again, to borrow from DeGranville, they're using special teachers, they're using AIS teachers, they're using special ed teachers, teachers assistants, aides, anyone we can get to fit into that model, they're getting in to help with that supervisory piece, and we would need to do the same thing.
Now, what led, in your case, what led your school to go in that direction?
Kids in school. And it's just K through 7th grade. The 8th through 12th, they're on a rotating.
So that decision was made last summer?
Yeah. Yep.
And it made at what level? Do you know where
Huh?
do you know where that decision was made?
I think it started with the board, just like what's our goal? We want the kids in, the younger, it's just easier. I know older kids need time in class too and not to read, but it's a little easier for a teenager to run a laptop Chromebook versus a kindergartner or a first grader that is gonna need supervision at home to do that. So, that was their thinking.
Rationale.
Yeah.
So, the rest of the work in the memo is really about those space and changes and some of those things that we would need to do in order to make things happen. We currently have aides on a 4-day schedule, they need to come back to a 5, driving, we have to return to a 5-day. Piece in there, logistics still need to be worked out, but that's kind of a, 25,000 foot look into the piece.
So for me, it distills down to 3 things.
Mhm.
Space.
Yep.
Staffing, and how to deal with the remote learners. Is that accurate if we were able to take a look at those 3 areas?
The-
I mean, we
Yeah.
can't change how many people in a room, even if we reduce the number of students and reduce the number of times, it's still going to affect if there's a
Mhm.
Yes.
positive case. So
Right.
for me, that is a variable that's concerning, but not something that I think we can, it's not going to change the outcome if we change the circumstances. So I know that we cut back on the staffing because we had the hybrid, and we were concerned about our state aid being reduced by 20%.
Mhm.
My understanding is at this particular point in time, we will not be facing that 20%.
That's the same understanding I have, is that 20% that was gonna be held is going to move forward.
So that's a good thing.
Yes, it is.
So we have saved some money
Yes, we
from
are.
the time we started in September to now,
Mhm.
and until if we do make some changes. I know that, teachers, they're invested in their students, and I know that there are a lot of positives in those interactions, but is this the time to start thinking about how we can take a look at how to deal with those remote learners, whether we add staff to do that, part-time teachers, aides, we resume the aides for supervision. We start looking at the space options. We have an invitation from the courthouse to use their space. There's other spaces that we can use. Is there some way that we can start that process so that we're looking at the space and the staffing and using those resources to help us deal with the remote learners and increase the in-person time for students here at school?
Yeah.
So that would be my desired outcome. As I know that we turned the taps off on the water, on the aid, on the money coming through, but at this point we have the money that was budgeted plus what we've saved to move us forward through to the end of the year. So I'd like to see us use those resources to have good outcomes for kids. I don't know what those numbers would look like. I know that there was a significant savings through the end of the year, and we're at least halfway
Yeah.
through.
Yeah, I can't tell you those numbers, not even from the hip,
Yeah.
that it would take a bunch of research.
So, I know it's going to take some time, but I do think that, I know that once you have something in place, it's difficult to make the changes, but I do think that it would be positive for everybody in the long run if we were able to get kids in here, even if it meant looking at other spaces too. I know that there are restrictions to that, but we do have other places just right here, very close to the school, that might be tapped for areas that we could have classrooms.
How does that work, like with school insurance and being off-campus places? How does that all work?
There's a couple pieces of homework when we're using off-campus sites that need to be done. One of those is the insurance pieces you bring up.
Just curious, because she said it in her letter.
You know, there's a certain level of insurance that follows the kids for a liability, like whenever we do anything, right? Whenever
Like
we're
a
going
field trip or
to field
something.
trips or something like that. The other part is the safe, adequate, and safe by SED regulation. I know Janice in the letter suggested that it meets all the ADA pieces, but it doesn't meet all the SED pieces. And I don't know what's involved in that. Luckily, we have architects, and they're here a lot because of the project. So it would be a conversation with Mosaic to say, what do we need to jump through? Like, for example, in the memo, I talk about, bringing in trailers. That's about a year's process.
Right.
And
That's not
so
going to help us at this.
yeah, it's not going to help us, this year. And next year won't be a need because we will have the kindergarten building back. And so once we have that building back, we can build in and plan with that additional space. Well, we all hope that this
I was gonna say, I hope we.
this all hope sends us in June, but
And I do think that even if it requires taking a look at maybe some waivers, or to taking a look at working with our reps from the state education department, to take a look at why we want to use it, and that it just be a temporary situation for this school year to create a situation where we would have safe space for students. And I do think that making that, doing the exploration and making that happen is important for our students. So anybody else's thoughts on?
I think it'd be irresponsible of us not to ask these questions, right? I mean, when you look at, now that there's a little bit of a space difference because of our project, but I think, when you look at what our neighboring schools are doing, some of those other things they figured out. I don't know the details of what they figured out.
I don't know what they, as far as that Friday piece, I'm not sure what, if there's an analogous situation on those schools, because I think
several other neighboring schools have students every day, at least in the elementary level, right? Not in the, not necessarily in the junior high or high school level. Because I mean, the way I look at it is, even if, so, the every other day thing didn't really make any sense to me. I mean, if you've got kids, purple kids and gold kids, to do any sort of swap with them, and people kind of built their schedule around them and requested them because it's what fit their life. So the other every other day doesn't make a lot of sense to me, or swapping from one week to the next makes, just an organizational nightmare for most families. But I think when you think about the opportunity to get some kids in here on those Fridays, I mean, it's, even if it was only every other, you're talking about 25% increase in time they're here, right? If they're here 4 days every 2 weeks and you can add one more day to that, 25% more is not insignificant.
No.
Even if it's only so maybe it's the younger kids.
Well, and that's what I think we need to look at. I don't think it's like all or nothing. I don't think we need to look at it pre-K through 12.
No.
I think, I know the kindergarten teachers expressed that it's working fairly well for them, the half day. And then, so maybe we treat pre-K, K different. Maybe then we look at our, 1 through 6 different, or 1 through 6, whatever we want to do. And then the high school, I don't think it has to be, because I don't think it's going to work.
Yeah, well, even that, I mean, particularly with looking at that Friday, I mean, there must be, so there would be rooms that have a teacher in them on a Friday, but as far as, so I don't know exactly what that would mean for teachers, but we would have classrooms, potentially, right? For some teachers potentially are distance learning, teaching, remote learning on those Fridays out of the rooms, but, right, there aren't students here on those Fridays, so are there opportunities to capture some space? I don't know exactly what people's schedules look like on Fridays to be able to use some of that space.
If we were to hire somebody who was going to be addressing the remote situation, I don't know exactly how it would work out, whether there'd be 2 people for elementary students, and I'm not sure at the high school how you could break it down, because there would be, you have your content area and your search, so that you make sure that you have all of those things in place. But if we were to move that responsibility off to teachers, my understanding is that's how they're using the bulk of their Friday, so that if we were able to shift that responsibility in another way, look at trying to free up that Friday to get kids here in school, and look at other options too. So I think as we move into the spring, it'd be easier to walk across the street if we can get kids over there for some lessons. Or
I know Cambridge, I spoke with some of the elementary teachers there, and how they kind of handled their remote students. So they're a little similar where, and I'm not sure if this is another idea, but so I have remote students and I have in-person students that are right in front of me, and I have another room of students that are in my class at the same time. So essentially kids in 3 separate locations, but I'm teaching at the same time.
so synchronous learning.
Yeah, so even though they're remote. And so Cambridge, what they kind of do is as they're traveling through their classrooms, because like myself, I teach in 4 different spaces in my building because I have to teach another 2 sections of each content area. But so they have when they're teaching a lesson, they rotate through, they're just teaching to their remote kids. So they don't have the students in front of them. So they kind of, one period is, just their remote kids for ELA. So instead of having to worry about those kids directly in front of them, and the remote kids at the same time, they do that. So just another idea of how it's a little bit more manageable, because it is hard.
Yeah, I wondered that, is there ways that gold days that some purple kids could sign on and be part of a lesson or something, maybe not the whole day, but maybe at 11 o'clock we're gonna do a math assignment, I'd like everybody to log on, and I don't know, I'm just ideas that maybe that way they could get some more teacher time, just
So-
thoughts.
To increase the amount of synchronous learning.
Yes,
I think that would be very productive.
that might be something that could be productive, that would help us with the
Then we can
space issue.
change the configuration.
Exactly.
Or could, the courthouse
Mhm.
or some external space be
A
You know,
remote
like
learning
my kids
center or
probably
something.
you know,
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to consistently connect. But if that was a way, you know, we could
But
probably
there's-
get them someplace. You know,
Right, there's
so that
locations
could be-
within the community that seem to be more than willing to let people come and use their space, so maybe that's something that we
Right.
could look into
and
too,
so-
and having
so
some
it
kind
could
of
be,
supervision there for
Yeah.
kids or whatever.
And, you know, if we were to, like Janice mentions, the courthouse space that's upstairs, if they were to use that for like music, then you get quite a few kids in there.
Is there accessibility though? That's the only question,
Pardon me?
sorry. Accessibility to the upstairs?
There's a lift, a
There-
seat lift.
okay.
It's
Yeah, I
not,
was just curious.
it's not an elevator. So I mean, those would be a question. But, and all of those things do need to be addressed. But what I was thinking is if we could relocate some of those things to a place like that, then the space here can be reallocated for, you know, other things as well, so.
And the good news is we're into February, so hopefully by April and May we can get kids outside
Outside,
for
yeah.
some of the specials and some of the activities
Yeah.
that would help too.
Well, I do think, you know, part of our challenge now are the winter blasts.
Definitely.
You know, that, you know, December, January, and February kind of compounds our situation.
And March can be pretty miserable too.
Yeah, agreed.
It's a good thing we talk about this now, because if we wait
Right.
till the weather's good to start talking about it.
Agreed,
Right.
yeah.
So
And
we
say, oh, we're
can,
almost to the end of the year.
so if we're
I'm
looking
on
at,
it.
say, the last 4 marking term, if we could get some,
Mhm.
I don't know, that would be what?
April, I think it's April
May,
to
June.
June.
So I know we had to close, what, the 14th or 15th of March last year,
13th was our last day.
13th?
Yep.
So.
Yeah, that's because
So
we had
we're,
the 16th and 17th were just teacher days, and then we were closed.
so if we could look at, you know, beginning of April to see if we could, you know, take a look at how we could, and anything that can be done between now and then with synchronous learning or anything that doesn't change the physical configuration, and would help the teachers to relieve that juggling of all the different plannings and lessons and tracking, and, you know, I know there's a lot of things to keep track of with as many different points of contact as you would have with those students. So, and I'm very willing to consider, you know, increasing staffing, you know, increasing the aides, number of days that they would be here. I know we might even be talking about increased bus runs, if we have to talk
Mhm.
about the number of students that are on buses coming and going. And I know for myself, I'm speaking for myself only, that I'm very willing to take a look at that and take a look at our budget and make sure that if we have the funds and they're available, that they should be used this year for students here, so.
Jackie, you do teach some synchronously,
Yes.
and was that technology like already set up in the room?
Yeah.
They
Well, I
already had
mean,
it.
starting this year, it
Starting-
wasn't
Or
before.
was it before?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we
So
didn't have
we
any.
would probably have that, if we did any synchronous, I mean, we'd probably have some
Yeah, it,
technology needs too.
As fortune would have it, we just got our second batch of SmartBond computers
Okay.
last week. Today at BOCES. So that's starting to come in, which means devices for kids, which means some of those things we talk about for kids to have their own devices, that to be able to do the work is going to be more.
Really, Jack, so what do you have? Do you have like a smart board and then like a camera on you, or how does it work? How does your setup
I use
work?
my Chromebook.
Just your Chromebook?
So I use my Chromebook, and then we have Promethean boards that I present. I mean, a Promethean board is really just a phone on a wall.
Oh.
Is that what it is? So I just use, I mean, we only use Google Meet.
Mhm.
Like, we don't use the whole district that's how we do it. And I just present from
You
that,
present from your
from
screen.
that board. I do use my Chromebook for sound, just because.
But you could probably, if you had a lab, I mean, you probably could present right from.
Oh,
Chromebook or-
I mean, at times during some, like, science lessons, I use my
Just trying to get an
Chromebook
idea of
present.
technology of what people might.
Or I
use.
use my PC. My PC is usually quicker than my Chromebook just because it's a direct, it's not using Wi-Fi. So I can present some stuff, like, for example, like videos,
Yeah.
like slideshows tend to be a little bit quicker with that, so,
Right.
and better quality sound and everything, so I use that.
My Google Meets are with smaller groups of kids, that's why I was curious how you
Yep.
guys did that.
Well, so, yeah, we don't have a lot of kids on, it's just my remote kids that are on the meet, because
Right.
my other kids are in front of me, or it's just the board in the other room that has to be on, like
Gotcha.
this. They don't have to have
Oh,
them on in
oh,
front of
that's
them,
nice.
because they see me
They
on the
can see
big
it
screen.
from the board, gotcha.
And that provides your audio too, I mean, between the two
Um,
classrooms?
we
too?
use a Chromebook just
For that,
because
okay.
the audio is a little, there's some,
Yeah.
it's just better quality through the Chromebooks.
Sometimes the way this room works.
Because that's how remote kids are a lot of the remote kids using, the connectivity with computers, or are they doing it via paper?
Yes, it's across the spectrum. You know, we have some kids who are synchronous in the classroom as it's going on, as it's happening. We have some kids who are asynchronous, who are doing the videos and the recorded lessons and the Google classrooms and the work that's not necessarily in sync. And we have some folks who are good old-fashioned paper, and they swing through the bus loop and pick up one pack and drop off their next pack into there. It really depends on the family needs, and then the principals make sure they adjust to address those needs of the family.
So is that synchronous learning going on throughout the school, through all levels, say first grade through 12th grade, or is it mostly the junior, senior high? Where,
I have seen it scattered through the building. I don't have a percentage of how much is it happening elementary versus high school. You know, there are some teachers that it's part of everyday life. You know, that's every day everyone's synchronous that's on. And I have some folks where it's on occasion. So, but it's happening. It's just not uniform or necessarily consistent across the K-12 spectrum.
So I guess for the high school, because I was a little unclear about that, but they're on like a block scheduling.
Yeah.
So like if we have the purple group on a Monday, Tuesday, so like they'll have math on just that Monday for 83 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll have the ELA on that Tuesday. So then like a lot of the teachers will then Wednesday do an asynchronous lesson for them, for the room, you know, the purple group that wasn't there. But then on Friday, they teach live classes remotely, is what I kind of had to just, because I wasn't really understanding the junior, senior high school schedule. So I was just asking.
Can I add into that? So that's one scenario. It really depends on the course and the type of the mix of students. So if Monday a student has math and they're in person, purple, they may then on Wednesday have math again. They're remote and they would check into their math class. Some teachers, it would be synchronous. They would log right in and have a synchronous lesson. Some other teachers record their lesson and post it later for the students to watch and then do that work. It sometimes depends on the amount of students that are able to, some teachers have almost all their kids can be remote and have a synchronous learning, and then other teachers, maybe if they have 5 students that are remote on a Wednesday, most of those students don't have reliable access. So they might have access, then they might have an asynchronous assignment where they just can go in and do work on Google Classroom. They check in, they might have to watch videos or do other types of work so that they can have a little more flexible time frame in getting their work in because they can't log in necessarily live to that lesson. And then Fridays, all teachers assign work for Fridays, but it's more of it's not a required, you need to be present for any type of in-person lesson. So a lot of time teachers will have students watch videos or have assignments that are continuation of what they worked on for the week. So there is instruction that goes on Friday, but the Friday piece is, I guess the best way to explain it is somewhat differentiated. So there's more flexibility because students don't necessarily have to log into math class at a specific time. Sometimes teachers will have small groups that they meet with for students who maybe were absent or need reteach. Some teachers have office hours, but it allows extra resource room time so teachers can then connect with students based on their individual need. Some teachers give tests on Friday and monitor tests so that they're not using their in-person time for tests. So I think, I appreciate the opportunity, thank you, for bringing that up, because I think sometimes it's not really understood that Friday is a pretty busy day, actually, for students and teachers. So there's a lot of kind of catching up, interacting. A lot of the teachers catch up with parents on progress reports for students on a weekly basis, and checking in with students as well. So there is a lot of it's synchronous and asynchronous, but it depends on the course. So I think we have at the high school, I think there's a lot of synchronous going on. The other piece that you might see is in that 80 minutes. So the classes that are 80 minutes, a teacher might meet with a group, the remote students for part of the class, and then give them something asynchronous for this extra 40 minutes, because they recognize that 80 minutes is a long time to attend to a video lesson. So a lot of times it will also be a partial synchronous lesson or check-in. So I apologize for interrupting, but I just wanted to kind of add those other layers to what you were talking about.
Thank you.
The point, they're still getting, I think, time, right? The same, if we were to break it down as minutes in like a normal school year, the 42-minute block is typically, right, high school is,
Yes.
right? So technically, I think that's I was just looking at minutes in class.
Yes.
Right now, like our schedule would be how it is. I guess I was just asking about that. It's kind of equivalent to a normal.
Yes, right. Because instead of 40 minutes every day, they're getting 80 minutes twice a week, and then the equivalent of a 40-minute type of instruction or lesson that's more independent work on a Friday. Yes.
I was just trying to figure out that, because I just didn't know how the high school did it. I had no idea.
That's very different than the elementary. They don't have those large 80-minute blocks, correct?
No,
No,
the
that would
classes
be-
are broken
that would
into
not-
smaller.
That would not hit the math stations of development.
They may, like in English and math, they may be at an hour, for that amount of time, but it's not an 84.
Well, there's a way to break it up.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Kind of inviting Karen to join in to fill that in a little bit, but I'm afraid we get every fifth word.
No, I know that people are working very, very hard to make it work and to be successful with students and have students be successful. And I just want to make sure that people know that at least I am supporting any additional staffing or resources that you need to increase that, so we can move forward so that students have additional time. And I have no magic wand, I have no magic ball, anyway, to know exactly how that's gonna work. That falls on the people that have to, actually do the hard work with students. But I just know that I do think that our parents are telling us that they're comfortable with the kids coming back for more time. And I think we just need to take a really, and we can't say, well, we don't, it'd be hard work. But I think it will be hard work that would have a lot of positive outcomes, so.
Well, and I just think if we can manage another day, like for our students, I understand all the other circumstances, because I'm there, but, I like Bob said, when you put a number on it, 25%, like, that's a big deal. And I'm just thinking, our students need consistency, being in school, having structure, meals, you know what I mean? That says, it does a lot for a lot of our students. So yeah, I think, of course, it's gonna be hard work, nothing's easy.
Nothing is, right?
But we
You're
need
right
to.
to point out that there's more than just academics at stake here. There are social and emotional health and other things, and just physical health too.
Definitely.
I think there are a lot of
And just getting time, right?
keep
Having students get up another day, brush their teeth, get dressed, go to school, have a routine, because it doesn't, when they're not here,
Yeah.
Wait, kids have to get out of their pajamas?
Yeah. It's just,
That's rough in the house.
So Dr. Glover, do you think that this is something that can move forward, and what would you think as far as a timeline for having those conversations and having some information?
Well, we start the conversations right away, for, you know, the what ifs and how does it look, and put some more concretes to it. The staffing and the finances to go behind it will take a little bit more, that's there. I don't think you aren't gonna see a full-blown plan at the end of the month. You there?
No, and I know
yeah.
that it's not gonna turn on a dime.
No, and it's, but I would say in March. In March, we should be able to have a draft of something.
I appreciate I know it will be.
Yeah. I'm not saying when in March, but in March. I'm saying that it's.
And, I know it will be a tough thing to change, you know, while the momentum is moving forward in the school year, but I think moving towards more time, because for me, the most precious thing we can do for students is to give them time here in school and on tasks, so.
There are customers. This is a business, right?
And that's what we got.
Isn't it? Right.
No, there are students.
I meant to meet their needs. I wasn't saying, I know there are students, but I meant as far as we need to meet their needs, right? And that's what, if they're asking for more time in school, that's what we need to do. Businesses do it all the time. You take a survey, right? They tell you what you want, what they want, and you give it to them. Our parents are telling us kids need to be in school. We need to make it happen. That's
Agreed.
my take.
Agreed.
No, and I think that, you know, I agree with him, that if there's other resources that are needed, that's, right, I mean, we should be in a good shape budget-wise, and so if there's other resources that are needed to make that happen, as far as the.
Just in time to have a new business person to help us out, so it would be great.
You know, even if we just expand back to what we had originally budgeted,
Agreed.
and we have money that we have saved because we constricted all of that from September to now, and, you know, so there are additional funds that can be targeted for, I mean, if we hire somebody to help out, in an instructional way, I mean, you can write it could be for a limited amount of time, you know, I mean, you can have a contract with somebody for
Yeah.
the school year, so, I mean, we're not
It's
investing
like a long-term
in,
sub position
you know,
almost.
long-term numbers here, but just enough to help us as we deal with, you know, the shifting space that we have and, you know, the demands that we have on that space. And if we can just help people do this, I think we have the resources that we can put towards that. And I'm not sure exactly what that will look like. It has to do with the people who create the plan. But I want to say that I think it's something that, you know, as Jackie said, that people are waiting for us to take that step. And hopefully, you know, I don't know whether the courthouse or other places are viable options, but they used to be. Schools used to do that. I did my student teaching at the second floor of the Asher Breeders Association up in Brandon, Vermont. So I think, you know, we've used social or, you know,
Sure.
community places before, so for short-term solutions. So at this point, I would like to open the meeting to public comment if there's anybody in the meeting that would like to have any comments or have questions.
Hi, this is Rachel Armstrong. I'm
Hi,
on the
Rachel.
phone. Is that okay if I talk from here?
Oh, sure.
Okay, I just want to make sure you could hear me. So I just wanted to mention that my children are in 2nd and 5th grade. There is almost zero synchronous learning happening for either of my kids on their remote days. So just to add that to like your bucket of information, I find it a little odd that it seems like no one in the administration really knows who is doing what with synchronous learning. I feel like that's an equity issue if some teachers are doing it and some teachers aren't. I know that I teach in Cambridge. I teach synchronously to my remote students every single period with nothing more than a Chromebook or an iPad, depending on my mood for the day. And I'm getting by just fine without a Friday off. So I really do think it's important, and I think the board kind of said this already, but I just want to reiterate that getting the kids in the building more hours per week in any way is really valuable for me as a parent, and I think for many parents in the district. And I do like some of the ideas that you mentioned, so I really hope that we move forward as quickly as possible with getting more instruction to our kids, whether it's synchronous when they're remote, on their remote days, or getting them in the building more hours per week, however that can be worked out. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Dan, is there anybody else that's indicating that?
I'm not seeing anybody.
This is Julie Myler. I would like to say something if I could quick.
Sure. Hi, Julie.
Hi. I think that there is an issue between equality and being equitable here. And so definitely like the goal would be to have obviously every student back into the building. But with the COVID challenges still, we need to look with an eye of equity. There are some students that to meet an outcome for all students, they need more support right now. There is some levels of urgency, even on the high school level, where some kids are really below and are at risk. And so I think that we need to look at those kids that are at highest risk first and implement them into more of a 4-day schedule. Even if they're both gold, they could go purple and gold. We have some students that are going 4 days right now that are at higher risk. And to incorporate them first if we really want an equitable outcomes for our students, and then go to more open to other students. I do believe in the synchronous, I do believe in other supports happening for the remote, but I do believe in that equitable outcome, meaning that there are some kids that are definitely at risk being 2 quarters in to this year and struggling, and that we look at them first and then go forward from there. That's just my input. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Julie. Is there anybody else that,
Hello?
hello?
Yep.
Hi, it's Jane Daly. How are you? Just wanted to add on a few things. One, add on to what Julie Myler was saying too, and also kind of wrap my brain of how logistically all this would work too, but of bringing people in. But one of the things to look at the actual spacing that we have right now and the availability of that. And what I mean by that is on purple days, if there's like today, if I had 6 kids in a classroom, but I have 6 open desks, and we're holding a couple of them for the 100% remote who may or may not come back in. If there's a way we could start to look at filling those seats more, and I think that's taking place on a lot of grade levels, and some of it's for no rhyme or reason. Sometimes it's just somebody's out for a few weeks and they need that. It's just that there might be more space. I don't know how it works, but there might be more ways to get, like Julie was saying, get some of these kids that are high risk in 4 days a week, just by looking at actual what space we're using, and and to work with that one. Logistically, I think it's going to be quite challenging trying to figure out how to go ahead with this into March and try to get more kids back. But I would like to get the kids that are struggling to in as soon as possible to work on those things. And that's it for me for right now.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you, Jane. And good luck.
Thanks.
That's a good idea.
Definitely.
Is there anybody else that, no? Dan, anybody in the chat?
No, not seeing it.
Okay.
I know Whitehall did that. I know Whitehall High School had issues just because of the flooding back in the summertime, but they have had classrooms repaired they brought in the students that are at high risk for failing, and brought those students back first. So I believe that's like roughly around 30 kids they were able to bring into the building. So because their whole entire high school is remote because they weren't. So, but
Cambridge has allowed that too. My son gets to go for 4 days because he's a high risk.
So I think anything that can be done to maximize the what's already here and already in place would be a very positive thing.
Well, it doesn't seem like that's something that would take months to
No,
figure out.
that's
Because, I
right.
mean, if you know how many kids can fit in a room and how many kids tend to be there, right? How many can we put in there with distancing? Because we've talked about this for a couple of months. I mean, this isn't the first time this has come up as a suggestion, right? I mean, that if you have some kids who could go, be gold purple days, and I mean, we already do have some. We could have. Can we have more? What is it? Probably going to be a grade to grade decision because it's going to depend on space. But I think Jane's question or comment about if there's extra space there, even if somebody else later would have dibs on it, if in the meantime it's going to be open for 3 months or 6 months, why not have a student there if that student
And that
is
can,
interested in it?
some of that can be at the discretion of the teachers based on how, classroom performance, however they want to, whatever metric they would like to identify.
Right.
Fill those spaces that,
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, it's Roz Haskell. I was thinking that was a great idea, but I think that the problem with some of the students that are having the problems is they're full remote because they're being made to stay full remote due to fear of exposure to other family members. I know that's what our problem was with keeping ours home, was fear of exposure, because you kept getting calls every other week that somebody was quarantined or another positive COVID case. While those have slowed down, how are you going to get those parents to trust to let their kids come in there? And some of them, I do believe, really need to be in there 4 days a week.
Well, and some of that could be on our end on the school's end of helping people gain confidence that the schools have been shown to not be a big risk for spread, right? So with appropriate measures in place, right? And so I think that's really been developing our understanding of that.
Well, yeah, the communication isn't getting out there about it, though. So maybe that would be a start.
Yeah.
I've even offered to tutor a kid to try and help them, but and they're actually taking me up on it, so he might end up spending the night a couple of days at my house so that he can do his learning. As I think a big part of it is it's gone on so long, I can't even get my son to change clothes. I'm like, his pants could probably walk away by themselves if he wasn't back at remote learning, because he just doesn't care anymore. It's getting them out of that mindset. And I was also wondering about the counseling, if you guys have just found a way to maybe implement some group counseling for the kids, to have some games and the icebreakers to talk about their feelings and what they're dealing with away from home.
I know that, do they actively reach out, the counselors? I can't answer that question, how the counselors.
There have been times where it's flown both ways, where our counselors have reached out to families to talk to students. Usually the ones we find are being disengaged. We'll reach out and try to get back and reconnect. There's been some house visits, if I remember correctly, through the school year to make those connections, but also if the families contacted and said, no, we could use some help for here too. So our current counseling staff is available to help with that engagement and peace and helping students with some COVID.
That's good. And just on another note, the one, Liz Cole, I can't remember the name of her organization, but have they actually physically come into our space yet? Or
not yet, but the application's into the state.
Oh, okay.
And
so we're still waiting.
Yeah, we're still waiting for there, and she said they don't anticipate any problems with the application. So it's we're just waiting on that.
Okay, Thank you.
How do I? Hello?
Hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, this is Kim Irby, and I just wanted to ask a couple of questions, or just bring up a thing. I know one of the questions on the survey was asking what the students' view was and what they thought of this year, and I didn't hear anything addressed. I'm not sure if people didn't feel comfortable or not, but I was just curious what the students were thinking about this year. I know my kids are just fed up. There's, especially the high school level, I know that there's some concerns about cheating and how rampant it is, and how the kids really are just, if I don't do the work, I'll just ask my friend to give me the answer. And that's really becoming a common occurrence, and it's really causing some issues for some of the kids because they feel bad saying, no, I did the work. Why shouldn't you do the work? And they're concerned about backlash and so on and so forth. So I'm just curious if that was brought up, if anybody else had any issues with that. And again, I do think that there's a lot of kids out there who do need to be in school. I know that we're falling behind, and that was another question. What is the district, is there a plan set forth going forward so when these kids do get back to a regular school year, how we're going to get them back on track? Because I know you're losing a lot, and kids are just checking out and not even engaging anymore. Why? I think a perfect example was the last speaker who said, yeah, my kid doesn't even change out of his pajamas. It's what's going on. Mine's the same on his remote days. So just a couple of concerns that I had. And that's pretty much it. I'm not sure, but I think it's important that all kids have an opportunity to learn, and all kids, and we find a way that we can help all of our students regardless of where they fall. It's just important that all kids have an opportunity in this school district to learn. It's very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Is there anybody else that,
There's a comment in the chat that we don't have good internet, so can't join during the school day. And I think that's probably, if there's many people who that's going to be the case. Case for.
Especially for those who are on the satellite,
Yes.
because they're in the prime business hours and.
and this is just, I don't know how it turned out. They were looking to create a space up in West Hebron at the church that would have a Wi-Fi hotspot.
Yeah.
Were they able to?
Yep. If you go in that parking lot, you can get access, and we can get the password out.
That might be something to, I don't know, maybe if they don't have internet, maybe they don't have a way to get to if somebody's working and they don't have a vehicle, but I mean, maybe there's ways to incorporate some of those hotspot areas in some sort of increased connectivity with school. So I that might be something to explore as well too. Because it is, I think it's really critical. You point out about the internet, I sat in my daughter's driveway and tried to call her and I couldn't, my call dropped, I had no
Yes, you get past the courthouse and it's like a dead zone.
Yeah, so, and that's right here in the village, so,
Yep, I had that drop
that, it's something that I think it's a critical issue. And even at my house, I have the high speed and you can see it spinning. So I mean, it's just, it's an issue, with the connectivity, the quality of it, and that may not be something that we can change ourselves, but maybe there's some workarounds that we can help kids access if we have those hotspots.
Well, yeah, that was a question. Has the school worked to get mobile hotspots to other, or other enhancements? I can speak to the same thing there. You don't really have cell service, but the hotspot may not help.
Helpful either.
For somebody who maybe has cell service, but just the cost of internet or something is a barrier, then maybe those hotspots
Well,
can
even
help.
people who do have cell services, like that data, like the overusage, I know sometimes like they use so much data or whatever, depending on what your plan is.
Correct.
Sometimes they run out by the end of the month. So we've had students that'll be like, oh, sorry, I'm done, I can't get back on until next week because I don't have any data left or whatever, so it definitely is a challenge.
And so I know that, as you said, Dr. Glover, there are a lot of moving parts, but and it may not be a 100% solution for 100% of the students either. But I do think that trying to try and find the best solution to get more time for the students to be in person is something we need to work towards very, very quickly.
I have a quick question on, do we have a sense of where we're at as far as vaccination among teachers and staff?
I haven't surveyed the staff to see who's willing to, who said they've gotten or not gotten it. I know through folks who have just said, hey, we got it, or just shared it. It's not the majority that's there. It's hard to get to a vaccination place. The supply isn't getting here. Washington County kind of has its own points of delivery, and they've been kind of specifying those to try to get those vaccinations.
200 were gone in less than 3 minutes.
Yeah, and there's a handful of our folks who got into that 200. So we aren't anywhere near that 50% threshold. If I were from the hip, we were probably closer to 15 from there, but I'm not certain on that yet. But I am hearing of more folks who are getting in. Every time we get information, we share it right out in enough advance time so people can, get on the button to try to get in.
Have there been any attempts to try to have a vaccine clinic here?
In conversations with the county, they haven't had the supply to do anything. So they've been holding it
Heretofore, but they might at some point, right? So there's workplaces that are set up to do that are on the list to have that done.
Once
So I
the
assume
supply
schools
gets
could be as
there, I
well.
think all the schools will end up being, at some point will end up being a point of delivery.
Right.
For schools instead. It's just that we aren't there yet.
The supply isn't there yet. I think
Supply
is the
isn't there,
problem.
enough
Oh, certainly,
staff.
but I think that just having that conversation, not waiting until.
So like we had a sign up, so we had to give our name if we would be willing to, like, would you get the vaccination if it was offered here? Not saying it's going to be, like, not saying we're setting one up, but when the time comes, if you haven't, would you be willing to just survey
How many people?
to make sure, like, who wants to receive the vaccination, who doesn't, kind of.
And we've
Well, that makes sense, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
looking ahead, not just,
Yeah.
it's being proactive, not reactive.
And we're putting that together now.
No, I think the more information we gather, the better the strength of our position is as we move forward. So, the quicker the better. So is there any other comments from? No. Does anybody else have anything that they want to add to? All right. Moving on to appointment of a business manager. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Richard Lasik to the position of business manager effective February 9th, 2021.
So moved.
Heidi,
Second.
second by Dan. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Motion carries 3-2. And the last one is entertain a motion to approve the terms and conditions for Richard Lasik. They were attached to the agenda. Motion to approve the terms and conditions.
Second, sorry.
I missed the.
Jackie said it.
Jackie,
Sorry.
sorry. I have
Jackie
some
again.
problems. I forgot to put my hearing aids in today, so I'm struggling to hear you. I'm sorry. I apologize. And we got a second on that one? Okay.
Dan, it was
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Nay.
I'm sorry, I didn't see or hear
No,
the vote.
I know, I'm thinking.
Okay.
I'll say aye.
Aye.
Let's just trying to process everything.
Okay. Motion carries 3-2. Is there anything else that, it's not on the agenda, but it was just a question. Jackie shared with us a request that somebody had asked for freedom of information request. Is there a form that somebody's supposed to fill out? What's the process for somebody that
The
has?
process would go to our records person. We haven't reappointed one yet. It is something that Karen had handled before. I've been filling in her stead. I did get that, thank you. That's there, so I have the request. Generally, there's a form people fill out, but if it's in another form or an email, we honor those.
Oh, okay, I just
And
didn't know what
so,
the process was.
and then there's a process from there. So that's kind of funny that you got it,
Yeah,
but
that's why I was like, okay.
I got it now and we'll carry it forward.
And I know typically sometimes there's just a form that, fill
Yeah.
out so that, people have to do it. I didn't know, I'd never seen one before, so, from here, so I just didn't know what the process was. So, is there any other questions or concerns that people have?
So, just on the regular agenda?
We are finished with the regular agenda, so if there's anything else.
Well, I'm just curious if we want to take a minute or two to talk about sports, right? I mean, it looks like where the county's going, where other counties are going, right? Because we're not going to meet again till late, our meeting's late this month.
Yes, it is, it's after vacation.
So, do we have a sense of, I guess, my first thing is just procedural, is who makes the decision?
Well, I will put it in any direction the board wants to go. That's there. I mean, we had the first conversation back November, with the fall, when it would fall too, and that's kind of the same process that we've been following. That's there. At this point, the question is the same. We have the state level. The state has taken the issue and has moved it to the local health departments. The local health department, at least for Washington County at this point, has said not yet because of where the infection rates are. If the county gets to the spot where it's, yes, we are comfortable with the direction we're headed, here's all the guidelines that we need to follow, where do we fall? We've said since November, that is if we're told, at that point it was the state, if we are told by those in authority saying it is safe now to participate in sports, that we would entertain that. If that's the position the board still holds, then but I will take that as we'll move forward. Unless we want to say we want to talk about it first before that happens. But as you said, break's coming next week and then we don't meet again until after. But our infection rate was at 4.7.
But the weekly one was 3 point something, but the rolling average was 4 points.
And it's been the rolling average
So
that's
why I asked which one is
So if
the
we're confident it's the
critical
rolling
one.
average, that's
So
what the
they-
county says, it's gotta be under 4% rolling average.
That's what our surrounding counties have been doing the 4%. So I'm gonna use as the basic gauge of where we're gonna be.
So Washington County hasn't specifically said the 4%?
Nothing official as to, once we get to here, this is what we're going to do, nothing official. So, I mean, that's the question. If we get there and the county says it's safe. The league is going to say, county says it's safe, here's what our league schedule is going to be. Where do we fall? If they say it's safe, will we participate? Or if they say they're safe, we still don't feel comfortable. We only have higher risk sports for our winter, with being basketball and wrestling.
So is the plan that we'd start with winter sports, or you go to the fall sport?
Fall 2 starts in the mid-March.
Mid-March.
Right, that's what I was wondering.
It depends on the timing, but the question's still the same. Is once we're told it's safe, do we participate or don't we?
What's the window for the fall sports? The winter
That's what I
sports?
mean, yeah.
They have to be finished by the middle of March, right?
Yes.
Well,
There's
they
like a week
overlap. There's a week or 10 days overlap, I believe, something
So I
like
think
that.
it's like mid-March, right, that one would start
Yeah.
and would end?
Yep, and then
One starts beginning of March and then to the middle, or is it? I'm not sure.
well, one for the winter sports, that window's open now. It's not open for Washington County.
When does this window,
Yeah.
when does this window close for?
This would end up, closing mid-March, that's when the season would be over. I
But
think-
fall two starts when?
Fall 2 starts mid-March, whatever the,
I thought it was like we already getting March, okay. I was just
yeah,
curious.
no, it got slid, hold on. I'm just looking for
I
that
remember reading
Monday.
it, but I can't.
So depending upon whether they
15.
use the weekly average or the rolling average, our averages have been pretty high. So we're gonna go far into that February,
Right.
beginning of March.
So we may
before
have to look at the
our
fall
numbers
too
continue to
versus
drop, so we get that rolling average. So even allowing for shorter,
Yeah.
practice time, would there conceivably be any time that, and what level of sports? I mean, we only have identified coaches, at least at the basketball
Yeah.
varsity level. So there's no JV or modified coaches.
All the focus has been at the varsity level. From the league, it's been at the
I don't know
varsity.
about the varsity.
Welcome to WebEx.
Hey, there we go. Welcome to the meeting. All the focus has been at the varsity level.
So I mean, we might, there'd just be a very small,
Yeah, and they end up being a very short, very small, winter season that's there. But then when the fall 2 starts in mid-March, if the COVID piece is enough where we feel safe with the safety precautions in place to be able to move forward, then what is Mother Nature going to do to us? As we said earlier in this meeting, March can sometimes be miserable too, temperature-wise and weather-wise.
You can also get a big snowstorm and not have any field usage.
Yeah.
is the gym gonna be open?
Yeah.
So it's available over vacation and,
February break won't because we're doing work in there, work in the gym area. And probably over April break it won't be available because they'll be doing
but
work
I'm
in
just
there
looking for
too.
the winter sports.
For the winter sports,
We
yeah,
didn't even get into the gym until the last week of February.
That's
Yeah.
what I mean, like I just
So
feel
we're
like-
only looking at
Yeah.
3 weeks.
yeah.
Right?
The league has I think the league has a schedule that is short as 2 weeks and 1 game. They're really looking for that opportunity to get, the kids to be able to play. That's it. So whether the winter will happen or not is going to depend on how quickly that rolling rate drops. But to me, the fall 2 and the spring seasons are very different animals. They're outside. And once you get outside, that to me changes the rules a lot. You're outside.
Plus, there's a
You
bit
know,
of distance
that's
involved.
I've even talked a little bit with Paul about what we can do to start addressing some of the fields now. To help get some snow off them, to help keep the moisture off of them as best we can, so the fields will get drier faster and available for use. And so we started some of those conversations for those other seasons. Spring lost out last year. I would hate to see them not have a season this year.
No,
Right.
I'd like to see if that would affect it. If they were able to have it, then each sport would have taken 1 season
Out of the.
out of the
Right.
schedule.
Exactly.
So it would be
Right.
nice to be
So-
able to see that happen.
Yeah, so the closer we get to spring, for me, the more urgent.
Spring, yes, and I agree, and I would really like to make sure that
Mhm.
we have everything we need to have, if we can have it, to have it in place for the spring. I'm just
Yep.
not sure whether we have the time or, I mean, I don't, what
For the
would
winter.
the number of practices you would need?
I think they've modified all
Yeah,
that.
they modified all of them.
Kids haven't even
It's not
been in
like
the
the
gym.
10-day, you need
Yep.
10 days
They-
of practice before.
They modified all of it.
Yeah.
So the shorter the shorter the season, the fewer the practices.
Well, it shows you what pre-planning can do. You're ready to pull the trigger on it,
It's
so as
there.
soon as they got to go. So the thing is I just underscores the pre-planning for bringing kids back. You've got the plan and you get the go-ahead, it just happens. So, I don't have any kids in the mix here. But I do know that I think in talking to my own kids about it, they would like to see kids in school more before the sports.
So how do we feel? Let's say that next week our 7-day rolling rate gets down into that 4%. The county says okay, we're comfortable with sports being able to start, here's your guidelines you have to follow. Do we start winter sports?
In my
Are any of those
opinion.
already doing, like, taking
Is that what you
advantage
were
of
asking?
off-season
Yes.
conditioning?
I don't know how many
Can't
kids
get
have
mixed here,
been
but we
taking,
were gonna do that.
advantage of that, so I don't know.
There's been a handful.
Sorry, I missed the question.
I was just asking how many people took care of the off-season conditioning. How many kids were doing that, and that would be, they might be more ready for even a game or two.
I don't know how.
The smallest group I've seen has been 2 or 3 girls, and I want to say that talking to Ms. Adams saw a group and there were 12 at one point. So, and that's about where our max is.
So have the students had an opportunity to sign up for the sports? Do we have the numbers to support a team?
Ms. Adams, do you have any of those numbers off the top of your head or sitting on your desk?
No, I could pull out, I would have to take a minute to pull up how many kids are in the conditioning groups. But remember, in order to be in compliance with the rules, those aren't the actual teams. So those are open to anybody who wants to sign up. And so we can't formally have practices for teams. So I'm not sure that we've really put out there and said who's interested in, nailing down the rosters for the basketball teams, for example, because we haven't known whether or not we're going to have a season. I think we have a good idea. I mean, we have the interest, but I think there's a fair amount of kids. I think we have conditioning for the boys basketball, the girls basketball, and a small group of wrestlers. The Fraunhofers have been going back and forth. So, I know there's interest there, and there has been some kids working out, but we have not formally polled. And to be honest, we haven't gone there because we're trying to kind of balance that level of interest without it's really hard for the kids without giving them false hope, per se. So, I think I think we would have to I'd have to talk to Mr. Zarzicki and look at what the schedule would look like. I think, by the time you get out of this week, I don't know how much longer that season would be. I think it would only be a week or two. I think if we could pull something together, I think kids would do it. I mean, we've been looking at, especially for the fall too, and all of those, just to add to that conversation. John's been ordering, we had to order some uniforms and, with some athletic face masks and some different things. We're looking at ordering extra catching equipment so the catchers each have their own if they swap out. So we're getting ready. We're assuming we're going to have the fall too in the spring. We're getting ready for that on our end.
I'm assuming no, but has anybody talked to the coaches about their perspectives on having a 2-week season or a 1-week season?
I know Don's been in touch with them about where things stand. I'm not sure if we've told them on that. I think Washington County has been the most vague. I know Dr. Glover just brought this up. Out of the other counties have targets, and they basically said, not right now, we'll let you know. So we don't really have a targeted date. So I don't think we've had that conversation, but I apologize. I wasn't prepared to speak to this. I did not get an update, so I apologize
No, it
for
wasn't
that.
on the agenda. It's just things change, and
Right. I can't say for sure. I know that he's been having some communication with them, but I'm not sure to the level.
But the kids are participating, and it's been a positive thing for the kids then.
Yes, and I'd say we have a fair amount of students. We have a wrestling group. We have it's kind of a combination of a wrestling soccer group. They're working out together. We have a girls basketball group. I believe there was a boys basketball group that's scheduled. I'm not sure what the numbers. We just got an update on the numbers the other day, but I'd have to pull them up. I don't want to guess. But I would say, I agree with Dr. Glover. I think the largest group was 12. So I think we have a fair amount of students. I don't think we have everyone. We did open it up to our remote students on the cell and made it clear that they could participate. And I think, again, one of the things that makes it difficult is we have this rolling group of students that aren't formally remote, but at any given time, for our in-person days, we might be running at close to a 20% absentee rate between absenteeism and self-imposed quarantines that families are just saying, oh, my child's not feeling good, I'm going to keep them home until I'm sure. Then we have mandated quarantines. So we have a lot of these rolling kids that are here for a lot of reasons. So I think that's also affecting sometimes who's showing up at the workouts.
Thank you.
So I apologize, but I could give you a more detailed update at our next meeting with the more specifics.
Well, I think it's a moving target. I think we have a short period of time, and we're here for kids' activities, and is I take a deep breath and say, my position would be to go forward if they open it up. We said we would do it if they determined it would be safe. So I personally will stand by.
With winter?
With winter, or are you
With
thinking?
winter. But that's just me. And then moving into the.
Yeah, I guess I don't feel strongly enough about it. I mean, I guess I feel like, it seems like a long shot. I sort of.
I think
feel
it's a
like we
long shot that we could get it in.
It might make more sense to focus on spring, really, plus or minus
Agreed.
fall too, but.
So spring,
I mean, I guess
outdoors.
I'm not gonna jump up and down that table like I do sometimes if administratively people felt like it didn't make sense, right? So right here we say, if everything falls in line, it happens, but I guess I feel like we all need to, everybody needs to think it makes sense at the administrative level as well, right?
Yeah.
I don't feel like, from my perspective, I guess I don't feel like I wanna give a mandate that it has to happen if Washington County says, okay, because I know Hoosick Falls is not doing it. Rensselaer County said, go ahead, Hoosick Falls, for reasons I'm unaware of.
I just worry
Decide
too
not to.
about the shortness of the seasons and people being injured because they're not prepared to
Yeah,
play a
and
game
that
or
was
to be
my concern about the number
ready
of
to
practices.
play. Just thoughts, but yeah, but asking about the workouts and things, and
Yeah.
maybe kids are, working out and getting some of that. I don't know, I just would be worried about people getting injured rushing things.
And now that you say that, to Ms. Adams's point, if we have a 20% absentee rate and we have a limited number of students that are making a
Actually
team,
playing.
and if it affects, the attendance affects the ability to put together a team, then we, that shortchanges the kids that thought they were gonna play on both teams.
Yes.
So maybe it is something if there's just not enough time. I don't think we'll get a rolling average below 4 by enough time in March to actually put something together.
We would have to give Glover's 2 cents to it. I don't think winter happens either. But stranger things have happened in this whole COVID thing than not. For all the reasons that you're mentioning. Really short time between here and the end. We're almost at 5% now, and you'd have to get below 4, and we're only at 3, and you need a lot of 3 to get yourself, to blow to there. And by the time you do, it's 2 weeks to get ready for it. And then are you going to potentially put the next 2 seasons into a jeopardy, or the school into a safety and health jeopardy to get 2 games in for there? Now, I don't want to take away from a wrestler to have the opportunity to have a senior night or a best, you know what I mean?
I know Saratoga County has not pursued wrestling, right? So Saratoga County has said, according to the Post-Star, that wrestling was not going to be one of their options.
Yeah, but they're doing basketball.
Right. And so it's 6 practices, right? So if later this week Washington County says go, then what, over break, there could be practices over break to.
Not if the gym is not available.
That's the other problem.
Construction work going on.
So could there be other,
Well, we can
all
slide them
gyms
into the
available,
auditorium.
Auditorium conditioning.
Yeah, we can slide them into the auditorium. But the other part.
Neighboring school's gym somewhere.
But the other part that'll happen is once we start getting the varsity sports in, that will bump the open gym pieces.
That's fine. To me, that's.
Because we need the space for the varsity sports.
That should definitely take precedence.
And I think that'll also depend on, the league and having a league meeting, and are other schools going to, will there be other teams to play? So I think once we find out that we get the go, getting the teams in the league that are part of the county, it's kind of looking at, are they in or out? You know, they're probably having the same conversations that we are, and that'll help us decide too, because if there's, you know, nobody's in, then we're not gonna have anybody to play.
There's a couple schools that are in, and they've said they're in, that are there, and they're both Washington County. There's another school that said they're out, and they're out. Now, the league is also switching up the scheduling to be county, no
So
dependent.
Warren County will play Warren County.
Yeah, so if Warren shuts down, we don't have to worry about losing a game, type of a thing, so.
But we're not supposed to cross county lines anyway.
Right, right, so I think we'll have something to play, if that happens. Now, wrestling will be interesting, because if that were to move forward, two of the schools in the county are on the same team, and it's that way in a lot of counties. You know, it's Whitehall, and it's merged, and we're merged with Cambridge, and, you know, so they have the league to figure that out.
Who is Whitehall merged with?
Fort Ann?
Oh, Fort Ann, okay, because I was gonna think if they went,
Just for wrestling.
Just for wrestling.
yeah. Might be somebody outside of the county. That'd be-
Yeah.
that'd be-
No, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Just curious, but.
So winter sports go to March 13th and fall 2 starts March 7th.
March 7th.
So that'll be 2 weeks after we come back from break.
So,
Well, I think it's worth at least, just so we don't need to have a special meeting to have this discussion, right? If there's.
but one of the things, and I apologize, I didn't,
Yep.
I didn't bring it as my homework, but I had been looking at some of the things, the documents that were coming out,
Mm-hmm.
and it did say that the plan had to be created and approved by the board before sports could move forward. So we may end up actually
Yeah.
having, because something has to, am I correct or not?
Yeah, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, I just was I didn't read the whole document.
There isn't a lot there that's new, though.
No, but it
Yeah.
just, it said that the board
Yeah.
would, at least to be part of the planning and to approve the
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah.
Well, just so that doesn't become a bottleneck, right?
Yes.
That work can be done ahead.
Yep.
But it's all dependent on
The rolling numbers.
what the county decides.
Right.
And it can be arbitrary, even though many years before, Washington County can still
Mm-hmm.
have their own metrics.
The governor's office was following the 7-day rolling average until hospitalizations became a concern, and it changed on a dime.
So,
You know, so the county can do the same. They can say that, you know, the 7-day rolling average isn't accurately reflecting what's happening now. We're going to look at the daily average, or,
they
you know,
could
that.
be looking at school numbers, they could be
Yep,
looking at.
they could, you know, our hospitalization rates have gone through the roof. Or even, you know, who knows? The variant numbers are up. There's just
Well,
a
that's,
lot.
there's a lot to consider.
Yep.
Does anybody have any other items for discussion? Entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Heidi?
Second.
Dave?
Before,
Oh,
there was one comment in
Oh, I'm sorry.
the, from the public that we didn't, and we had the public comment before, there was one follow-up question, I think. I don't know whether we want to,
yeah, before we adjourn, well.
before we adjourn.
The timeline for next steps.
Correct.
There's
Read
a
that.
question of timeline for next steps to be taken. I think that was with the more reopening discussion.
I'm sorry.
Timeline,
Steps to continue, when we would move forward with things.
yeah, regarding reopening. Yeah.
We're going to be considering the plan. Dr. Glover says March, we should have something to consider. So we're looking, target time, springtime weather, beginning of April.
And, you know, if we were to,
But other things can change.
Yeah.
We talked about the synchronous learning. We talked about other things that can happen within the school day that doesn't change the configuration of students, but that there may be things moving forward that increase time on task for kids without actual physical time.
that last marking period starts somewhere after spring break.
Yeah, but we could.
Yeah,
Some of those things we can do
definitely,
immediately, right? I mean, if
So,
someone's got,
yeah, so for the major you know, if there's gonna be a major overhaul,
Okay.
that's
But-
probably your in-time target.
We'll take a page right out of the sports book here. We have our plan ready, and when
We'll
we
be ready to roll when it says
we'll be ready
okay.
to, we'll be ready to implement.
But it seems like much sooner than that, we could have available
should
seats
have-
full if there's students who want to be in them.
Agreed. But those were the things that you said you were gonna work on
Mhm.
right away, so.
Yeah.
But just to answer the question, some of the
Yes,
wording,
yes, yes,
the commenter, the chatter.
You know, there was a question about whether we could maximize the number of students who were coming in to fill the
Yes.
spaces on a rotating basis. I mean, there may be other ways without actually physically getting that day in there, but increasing time, but have a plan to increase the time, you know, for March. Right?
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
well,
Yep,
We're all-
absolutely. I mean,
we're all on the same page. Good. Jackie, you okay? or-
Yep, I'm good.
Alright.
Just a little cold.
I was gonna say,
Frozen.
I opened that up.
The window is right.
That door closed, I opened it up.
I'm used to freezing.
Motion on the floor to adjourn. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned at
So
7:00.
cold. I didn't wear a heavy sweater.
And I brought a sweater, I left it in the car.